I think I just read some weird article or some weird Reddit post about war elephants and Carrie Castle.
We're back with another episode of Open Indie, and today we're gonna look at a dark fantasy universe called Source of Madness being developed in Sweden. Per, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Per, and I am the CEO and creative director of Source of Madness at Carrie Castle.
Nice to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Your current game is called Source of Madness, and it's in early access at the moment since September 2021. And it's a dark fantasy roguelite. That's what I read. Maybe you could describe a scene for us from the game. Like, what exactly do we see? What do we hear? And maybe how do we feel when playing the game?
Yeah, I would probably just start with the first area of the game, which is the Loam Lands. And you exit the world through the Tower of Knowledge. And as you enter the world, like you have these like huge gates that open up with a slam. And you can see old English countryside that is very run down with lots of organic and distorted monsters. And the combat and the world in this scene is one of hectic scrambling. Like you run away and the monsters follow you, and you run away and dodge, and you can jump up on top of their heads and you can try to dodge these weapons and spells in midair. And you just try to survive.
I read it's inspired by Lovecraft.
Yeah, I do. I have gone down the swamp, like the swamp of Lovecraftian stories, and read so many of them. And I read a lot of Mike Mignola's comic books as well, which are very gothic and occult-like. And I think the nice thing about the Lovecraftian aspect is the fear of the unknown. And this is what we wanted to try to experiment with in this game. We want to experiment, what if you don't know what's on the other side? And what if you don't know what kind of monster you will fight? And that's what we thought would be a nice procedural fit with the roguelite genre and Lovecraftian, is that we will have procedural monsters and you would not know what kind of monsters you will be fighting. And every new time you replay and you run, you will fight new kinds of monsters that you have not seen before.
Your game, it has an AI which creates the monsters. So what does that mean? Does the AI create always other like weird looking monsters, or also change their skills and behaviors? And how does it work?
Yeah, so in the game, we have a couple of different AIs. I would almost say that the one that procedurally generates the monsters is more of an algorithm, or even though AIs are also algorithms, but this is more of a structural procedural generator for the monsters. Like they stitch together, like Frankenstein, like you stitch together different body parts and limbs and spells to create a monster. But then we have, like, since our game is physics-based, like all the monsters have limbs and muscles, we have the sophisticated part of the game is that we have trained a neural network to generally make 2D physics bodies, like with muscles, walk. So the idea is that this AI should be able to take any body that we throw at it, and it should be able to walk somewhat good. So that's the big challenge.
Does the AI then only create these different looks of the monsters, or can the monsters also behave differently in a fight?
Yeah, like they can. We have different attack and movement patterns for the monsters that are a little bit different properties in how they will walk. But the thing with the look of the monsters, we actually also have this offline tool that we're using to generate textures. So we have an AI painter that repaints monster skins for us. So we have quite a lot of different variations on the same kind of asset or like limb, but we have repainted as fire or as magma or as frog legs, that kind of stuff. So we have this fancy AI that can repaint all our assets so that we don't have to do all the painting. Like we create a concept art kind of for it, and then we have it repainted in different styles, so it can look like it's meat pile or like meaty, or it's very tentacly, or something like that. And that makes that we can, like, from the same asset, we could have a lot of different variations, and we can make them feel and look very different, and have them fit their habitat more. Like, so if we have a Forest of Lights, for example, is a swamp with lots of arcane and occult magic, and there we have them more be fused with frogs and snakeskin kind of things. That looks more like that environment.
Maybe you could also describe the gameplay a little bit for us. So there's lots of fighting, or is it more like exploring?
Yeah, I would say it's lots of fighting. It can get kind of intense. Our goal with the game is that you should get into a flow where you can feel like you're very struggling, or you are invincible at times. And the game loop is kind of like at the start of a new level, when you progressed in the roguelite, you will be a little bit underpowered, but as you get more items in the game, you get more overpowered. So you get these like kind of peaks as you play the game. And the combat is basically magic slinging. Like, you shoot lots of different magic types and try to find synergies and try to become more powerful that way. And you try to either be in melee distance, or you try to kite the monsters quite a lot. So you can pick your own kind of style, but it's a very intense action roguelite.
Why light? What's light about it?
The light thing is, for one thing, that is action roguelite. So you can't really have an action roguelike. That doesn't exist, since it's roguelites. Roguelikes are supposed to be like, they are supposed to be turn-based, for example, and also not have any progression. And in our case, in our roguelite, we have progression in the form of a very big skill tree where you can find new classes and new unlocks, and you can slightly make it more easier, but it's more that you will need all the help you can get to complete the levels. So you can like upgrade some healing potions and that kind of stuff. Our main inspiration for the game has been Dead Cells, especially for flow and some of the unlocks things in the game. So when you unlock a thing, it has a higher chance to drop in the world, or it has a chance to drop in the world, that kind of stuff.
Well, because the AI is always creating different weird monsters, how mad will you get when playing Source of Madness?
Well, I mean, it says so itself. It's the source of madness, right? So you get very mad. No, well, yeah, it's. I think there's these moments where you think you're safe, and then you're not safe, and you like kind of get like. It's not a jump scare, but it's almost like a jump scare. Like you didn't think the monster would be able to get to you, but it could in some strange way. And that's like, there's not a madness mechanic per se in the game at the moment, besides some curses that you can get. Yeah, but there's not a madness mechanic.
What games can it be compared with? Like, who will have most fun playing this game? It also sounds a bit like Dark Souls.
There is some aspects of it that is. We wanted to make it challenging, and I think they call, for example, it's also similar to Dead Cells in a lot of ways, and they call themselves Souls-like, or Metroid Souls, or Retro Souls, something like that. And I think that's like, it should be challenging, it should be some combat. A lot of the combat in Dark Souls is melee based, but you can also play as a magical person or class. And I think that there's while there are magical spells, roguelites like Wizard of Legend and that kind of stuff, I think there's not enough with like funny and nice looking physics-based spells. So that's kind of something we excel at, is that our monsters are physics-based, so we can have spells that are physics-based. So for example, we can make spells that creates a webbing to the floor, and you can actually see how the monster struggles to get free from the webbing, like spider webs and that kind of stuff. And that's stuff we're going to experiment more during the early access with as well. But yeah, there has similarities to Dark Souls in a way, even though it's 2D, and Dead Cells for sure. And there's Dead Gods and Hades. There's some inspiration from that, even if it's side view. And I would say even Blasphemous has some. I hate some parts of Blasphemous, and I think we fixed some of those parts. But it's a gorgeous game, of course. But yeah, I think it's like, if people like roguelites and some, it's not like, while it's platforming, it's not, our focus isn't platforming at all, but it's the combat and the exploration.
Source of Madness is in early access at the moment. What player feedback are you getting?
Yeah, we are getting surprisingly a lot of, like, it's good. Like, most people really like it. And now we're starting to experiment with stuff, and people will have a lot of things to say about those things. Like, we're trying to experiment with family curses, which is kind of strange roguelite way of adding progression. It's kind of like that we have last names that have different like stats in the game. And if you get a curse in the game, those curses will stay on that last name. So if you pick another guy or a girl with that last name, though they will also have the curse until you purge it. So, but the idea is that these curses are somewhat bad, but they should also be able to find a very weird, like quirky synergy with some stuff. So it could be turn something bad into something good at the same time. Or it's something we're experimenting with, at least.
Can you name a curse, like an example?
Yes. So there's like 2 fun ones I implemented just recently. The first one is like followed. We just call it you being followed. And it's that something that spawns monsters at you. Like maybe 1 or 2 minutes delays. Like sometimes it spawns a little monster at you. And that could be a nice way to just get more currency or just to trigger up some stuff in some places. And then there's that evil reaching thing curse, which spawns a tentacle on you, like that's attached to your player with physics. So it's kind of like, it tries to, like sometimes it grows out a tentacle that tries to punch you, or there's also one that tries to grab the ground. So you can get rid of them, you can cut them off, but they respawn eventually. And
okay.
Yeah, but the idea is like maybe we'll have like a beast master class in the future that maybe it gets perks from having monsters or things attached to it. So it could get like more powerful by having that curse on it, for example.
It seems to me that you're still experimenting with a lot of stuff. Can you maybe tell us what things you still need to work on in the game?
Oh, yeah. Like feedback from the players. We're worked on quite a few things. There are some control binding stuff. But surprisingly, not that much. I think the thing we're working very hard on now is the onboarding or the tutorial, like the early parts of the game needs to be more exciting. And they really want to see, like we have a lot of fun spells in the game, but at the moment we're actually hiding a lot of those behind locked icons and that kind of stuff. So we want to make sure that the first part of the game are more engaging and fun, and that people can see the carrots that will be there eventually. And that's something we unfortunately kind of started hiding in a way. Like we want to have people to find new stuff and unlock them. But when we did that, it turned out that we might have hidden too many things, because now people can't see what they should be looking forward to finding or unlocking. So that's one big thing, is that they don't think they don't see the potential at the start of the game because they haven't played enough yet. And that's something we're gonna work on quite a lot.
So you're gonna unlock some stuff earlier.
More unlock stuff earlier, and more fun stuff earlier as well, like in the tree, so that they can see so they can like work towards something that isn't just like a health upgrade or something like that.
And are there plans already when you wanna leave early access?
Not that I can mention. Like we have some idea when we would like to leave early access, but I think we might stay a little bit longer than we had planned, because I would want to just make sure that everything just feels right when we release it. And we get a lot of inspiration from the community on our Discord that plays the game. And it opens our eyes a little bit to what we would like to add to the game. Like, while it's somewhat feature creeping, it's still like we want to make a really nice game. And I think there's a lot of people waiting for the game that would like to play a really, really good game. I mean, obviously you want to play a good game, but I think we have a lot of potential with what we have. You
kind of take your time just really making the game how it's supposed to be.
Well, at the same time, I do a lot of game jams. I like to do experimental games. And I think our path and how we develop our game is not like we do make GDDs, like game development documents. But I think that game development shouldn't just be, I had this plan and then I do it. I think the plan, it should be an organic process where you kind of create what you think. Like it's like a ship that you steer around, and you try to. You obviously need to get into land at some point, but you can always like steer it around and like try to find like what makes sense, and be humble that the original plan might not always be the best way to do things, and that you should be open to iterate on things quite a long time and work agile. Well, that's how I like to work, at least. And I think can create a very, very nice results.
Creativity always takes some time, and getting new ideas and improving stuff.
Yeah, when we released it on early access, we got a lot, like we got surprisingly good feedback from everyone, that everyone really liked it, even though like they saw problems and they wanted more. Another thing that people really complain about early on, that we have fixed now mostly, but will continue working, is the readability of the attacks of the monsters. And that was very difficult for people to see. So we have like added different kind of like ability, like visibility patterns. And we also added like a combo pattern. So it actually like they do the same kind of attacks in an orderly fashion. And they do the same one until you remove one of their limbs, kind of thing. So that's another thing we have worked quite a bit on. But we have mostly fixed it now, but there's still work to do.
Talking about you and your studio, you worked at Ubisoft before, and then you founded Carrie Castle. Well, Ubisoft is a big name, so why did you leave them and started your own business? I
do feel like, for me at least, working in big companies feels like a little bit like being in a cogwheel in a machine. So like you're just part of the system. Like you could be easily replaced, and you don't really have, since it's a big company, you can't really have an impact as much as if you're a smaller company, or if you're the CEO and creative director. And I feel like I needed like an outburst for my creativity, and I didn't really get that in a big company in the same way. Even though Ubisoft was super nice, but I want to get back to Sweden, and I wanted to have more freedom to create stuff.
That's why you founded then Carrie Castle.
Yeah. I started reaching out to a couple of people, and then I talked to Robin, and then he was also kind of wanted to start something. He had a company before. And then I just moved back to Sweden because I was in Finland with Ubisoft Red Links, which was pretty interesting. But then I moved back, and then we started, and we did a lot of consulting before we really kicked it off. And then it's just been going on since then.
And why did you call yourself Carrie Castle?
Well, naming things are hard. Well, I do like our name.
I know.
But we tried so many names that we got rejected from. We had like Top Hat Raven. Like I wanted a Raven kind of name for a game at first, because I think they're very smart. But elephants are also very smart. So and then the reason why it's called Carrie Castle is, well, there's like elephants are smart, but also Carrie Castle is apparently a very old name for a war elephant in India, or like what British people call war elephants, at least. You know, like they had like people like sitting on top of them. So Carrie Castle technically is like an elephant with a tower, with a castle on it. So we're taking a little bit more literally. So there's an actual castle on the castle, on the carrying elephant.
How did you come up with that? Just by seeing an elephant, or how did that happen?
I think I just read some weird article or some weird Reddit post about war elephants and Carrie Castle, and I think it like flows pretty well as well to say Carrie Castle. And there's a lot of puns you can do on Carrie Castle. Like we can have our own dish. There's like curry kassler, which is like I think kassler is a Swedish dish, but it's like kind of ham, kind of like curry and ham. Weird thing.
Yeah, I like the name. And it's also something different. You remember it. So I also did a little bit of stalking.
Oh.
And I checked out your LinkedIn page.
Oh, I haven't updated that one for years.
Ah, okay.
But it's like, I guess then you will be digging in the past for real.
Well, that's just a sentence I saw, and it says, I quote, "I used to be a technical artist in the game industry. Now I am not sure anymore."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Why weren't you sure?
I don't remember writing that. But I guess I'm having a lot of responsibilities as a CEO. So a lot of like meeting and producing lot of meeting, producing, and creative directing tasks and managing people, kind of thing. I guess that's a lot of things have taken over. And also, since we're a three-man company, there's a lot of like design decisions and having a finger in with everything, like just trying to get everything to work together and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know why I wrote it like that, but probably something like that. That I guess I'm not a technical artist per se anymore, but I still feel like a technical artist. Like, I feel like I'm fighting fires all the time. Well, it's not like there's fires all the time, but I want to help and fix things. And that's why I'm CEO as well, I think, because I don't mind talking to people and I like helping people. And that's what a technical artist should do, besides being very good at art and programming.
Before you've made Source of Madness, you've made 2 VR games, which were Zen Garden in 2016 and Everything Must Fall in 2017. And I looked at trailers from those 2 games, and they look nothing like Source of Madness, because Source of Madness is like dark fantasy. And these other 2 VR games, they look quite happy.
I mean, it's a stylized approach to game art in those 2 games that are very like, it's very easy to make 3D models look good with a couple of shading and flat colors, and it's kind of like the style of Nintendo, I suppose. And those are it's very like, I like to find pipelines and ways, since I'm a technical artist, I like to find ways for us to be like, we were 2 people back then, so I wanted to find ways for us to make a lot of content with very few people or only me. So that would be one way. Like, instead of having an AI painting our pictures and that stuff, I made it so that we have flat colored shading. Well, not flat color shading, but flat colors with shading and properties and good material properties, which makes it look more like Nintendo. And another reason is that I think we just weren't mature enough. Like, not mature that we didn't do mature stuff, but that we didn't do our business quite well enough. And one reason, I was betting on that VR would be a big thing, but then it wasn't such a big thing. It was okay, but it was very hard to survive on VR games back then. It might change now with Oculus Quest, but it was very niched. And I think people wanted more mature games because it was only adults that could buy those kind of hardwares. So I think, and we also tried to, we wanted to make a game that also would work on PlayStation VR, even though we never released it on PlayStation VR. We did some limitation on how to design the game and the look of the game to fit those criterias. Oh yeah, and this easy style is also very optimized. Like, it runs very well on VR headsets and such things. So it's a very thankful approach to making VR assets that is like very clean and easy looking for the eye. And I think that was actually one of the major reasons why we keep it very clean, like we did in Zen Garden and Everything Must Fall.
Because VR games were quite difficult, like to get the people, and still are, I think. Is that the reason why you said you quit making VR games and do something different now?
Yeah, honestly, I think I burned out a little bit on VR because it went bad enough that we had to do a lot of consulting, and it was kind of tight with the time. Like, we had just enough money. Like, we burned out through our savings to start a game company and all that early on, and then the game didn't make any money, even though we were on an incubator. And we had a lot of we actually went around a lot of events and had people playtest them. So everyone loved the game, but I think they also loved to test out VR when it was new. So it's very easy to get false verification on things with the VR games, especially then. So yeah, I think it's just very, very hard to succeed and survive when making VR games. Like, some people do, but very few. I mean, I love making VR games, and I still do some 3D sculpting in VR because it's so much nicer than doing it the old-fashioned way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there's a voxel-based sculpting program called Medium, which is very, very nice.
So you design in VR, and but the game doesn't have to be in VR.
Yeah, for some game jams, I just go into the VR space instead and sculpt the things, because you can make a lot of very high poly assets very, very quickly that way. And you get a very good perspective on shape and form when you are in 3 dimensions.
Did you also design some stuff in VR for Source of Madness?
Yeah, actually I did some of we have a cinematic at the start where I did the concepts in VR actually. Yeah, I sculpted ideas in VR. And some of the sculpts I even took into Blender and did a high-res render stuff on it. So actually, a little bit.
On the Oculus Store, I also saw that your VR game, your second one, Everything Must Fall, is still in early access. Are you still working on it?
Well, I do hope to finish it at some point. I think that I don't even know if early access is still a thing on the Oculus platform. But we were one of the first ones to use early access there. And then, but I think it was part of we were burned out. So we just stopped everything back then to focus on our health and getting money to survive. So we started working consulting and did a lot of work jobs for Volvo, and a lot of VR or AR related jobs to different firms. And then we finally got back on our feet and started working on the Source of Madness stuff.
How did you get the idea then for doing such a game like Source of Madness?
I was going to pitch a funny game that we did a game jam for, which was Dino Incognito, which was basically those T-Rex suits that people have? Yeah, imagine that you're playing like that one, but you're actually a real dinosaur. And you're trying to hide that you're a real dinosaur, pretending that you are, in fact, one of those suits, but you're not. You're actually a real dinosaur. So, but the scope was pretty big, and I don't think it was a game we would have wanted to make in the end, and it was pretty big scope. So, 1 week before GDC, I changed and tried to remake Source of Madness, the first part of it, just making some art for it and some character, and then me and my co-founders made some quick AI stuff to make the monsters move around. And then we actually showed it off a little bit, or we showed it off on GDC, and people were actually a little bit interested. But we had a very different look back then. That was black and white, hand-drawn. It's very hard to pop and be visible with black and white, because it's not, while it's contrasty with black and white, it doesn't really contrast to everything else that is colorful. So it took a while, it took maybe a year before we changed to this AI style and colors. But it was a very interesting trip. But the fun thing is that since I found and made some part of the AI, we could just use the old concept art and the old ink drawings as a base for the AI to work on. So it just repainted those assets, which was nice. So I saved a lot of time doing it that way.
I saw, looking back at your very first VR game, Zen Garden, there's a description on your website. Yeah, back to the stalking. And there it says, I quote, "The project was made on personal demand from our developer Per Fornander, who felt dissatisfied with the current relaxation apps on the market." What happened that these apps don't relax you?
Well, it's true. I felt like the apps that were there, it was for the Gear VR, for the Samsung phone. There was an old headset. They had their own thing that I worked with Oculus with. But I felt like I didn't really like those apps, and you just were in a room. But in our game, in our Zen Garden experience, you could play music pretty much. You could look at objects, and you could either it pulsates or do meditative stuff like pulsing and channeling, and you can look at different kind of light orbs, and if you look at them and sweep your vision across them, they play this kind of melody, ping pong bing ding kind of things, and it was very, very serene. And we had a couple of different rooms that were very nice, out in the Arabian desert, or in a stone Zen garden, or in a big cathedral and pantheon, I think we made as well. And we actually have very good assets as well. We have made it very nice looking for being on a phone back in the days. So I'm pretty proud of that one. We even had like, it was funny, like it was a small project. We made it maybe in a month or something like that. I think we worked on a weekend sometimes. So we took a couple of weekends sometime every now and then to work on it because we weren't full time back then. Yeah, we also got a mail from someone that worked on rehabilitation or something, or psychological things that actually used it for patients, and they really liked it. So that was pretty fun. It was pretty crazy. Even though it didn't like it, we couldn't survive on it. It's still pretty cool.
Do you also do a lot of meditating?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a spiritual, meditative, Buddhist kind of thing, but I do try to meditate sometimes, and I think it's pretty helpful as a game developer to meditate, because especially as an indie, you have so many tasks, so many things, so your mind can very easily get scattered, and it can be very hard to focus eventually, and that can kind of like, you don't notice it, but it can kind of stress you out eventually, and then you need to take a breather and try to meditate maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I do it when I get home sometimes, and I think it helps quite a lot. Like sometimes you don't even realize that you're stressed.
Do you also meditate with Zen Garden?
I don't know if the Gear VR thing works anymore even. It was quite a long time ago, like 4 years ago or 5 years ago now, I think. So I think maybe the VR industry have moved past those things. I do think it's a very nice experience, though. I really liked it. I used to watch movies with the Gear VR as well. I think if I still had a phone with it that worked, I probably would have used it a little bit.
What moment in your life as a developer will you always remember? Is there something?
Well, I don't know if this has too much to do with it being a developer, but well, when I lived in Finland and I worked there was this moment where Sweden and Finland have some kind of rivalry. I think it's mostly Finland that has a rivalry with Sweden. But we owned them for like 600 years and have a crusade against them or something, I think. So they have to learn Swedish in school. So there's a couple of things that they're a little bit sour about. But Sweden don't remember that. But yeah. But yeah, so I was working there, and I don't know how long I worked there, but maybe 4 or 5 months. And then we had there was a hockey fight, not a hockey fight, a hockey game. And it was Sweden against Finland, and Sweden won. I was looking at it, I don't really watch hockey, but at that point I'll watch hockey, and everyone was at the big TV room, and I was working at my place because I had stuff to do, I thought. But I still had I watched a little bit at the side. But then I could just hear, it was pretty tense to be the only Swede in Finland, or in that office at least. And then the Swedes beat them, and everyone was so upset. And then it was kind of crazy. I think the creative director there at the time is a very interesting and kind person, but he's also very crazy. He's a very crazy guy. And I don't know, I think he was just full of adrenaline or something. And he challenged me to a wrestling match after it because they lost or something. I think that's at least. And it was very intense. Imagine that. I don't think even that would fly nowadays anymore, I guess. But even though it's only 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then we had a wrestling match, and then he had what's it called, the strangle lock hold, I think, on me, and I pushed him back. So I actually pushed him into a table or something. And we actually had a real wrestling match, Matt.
In the office or what?
Yeah, he's crazy, but it's a fun kind of crazy. But it was, is this all okay? But I didn't get too hurt, but it was a very, very interesting workplace. I think besides that, it was kind of a nice place, but. But I think the other part of that is I think he broke his toe when I pushed him into that table.
Oh shit!
So, and he was going to E3 a couple of weeks after that or something like that.
Oh no!
Wow, it's kind of, well, that's very intense memory for me because there was so much stuff and so many things that happened for that reason. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, he didn't just wrestle me. He wrestled, like, I think every new person had to wrestle him, which is kind of also a little bit strange. But it was a bit like this kind of like weird, crazy. He's like this weird, crazy uncle that tries to make people laugh. Like he does a lot of volunteering work as a clown, I think, for kids. So he has this kind of like weird, like he jumps from a high tower dressed in like clown makeup kind of stuff to make like, yeah. He's a crazy person, but he's a very fun person at the same time.
I just hope he doesn't wrestle the kids as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't stand a chance. It would be a short match at least.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, that's a cool memory. Yeah. Yeah, looking more at Sweden and where you're also getting support from, you've got a publisher at the moment.
Thunderful.
Are you happy having a publisher?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, we financed quite a lot of the development early on ourselves with our consulting money. But that's also up to a point so you can get the funding and actually be full-time and work on it and having force yourself to have a very good plan on how to execute on the idea, which is very healthy and very nice to not have to worry about financing for a while. So yeah, we financed like maybe 2 years almost with, originally we were probably financing a little bit less, but yeah, we've been financed the whole time now since we signed the contract with them, pretty much. So it's really, really nice because like it's really tough to run an indie studio. And it's very nice to have some stability in that kind of sense.
Are there also funding programs in Sweden for indies, maybe especially?
Well, there are not directly, I think. Like there's the EU stuff. Everyone can do the EU stuff. I think there was like the Creative 2020 or something EU thingy. But we haven't searched for any kind of things. We searched for funding. You can get funding to go on trips for networking purposes, but you can't get money in the other sense. So, but there are EU directives like the incubator, the game incubator, and some other stuff, which is in Gothenburg that we were in the game incubator at Gothenburg, which was very helpful. So it helped us network with other developers in the region, and then also helped us to go on big networking events like GDC, Gamescom, and that kind of stuff. And that's been very, very helpful and helped us grow and mature as a business quite a lot. And also very nice just to meet developers and other like-minded people.
How's the Swedish gaming industry doing as a whole? Like, is it big?
Yeah, it's very big. I think I actually read the data, the industry report just recently. Like we even have a lobby organization in Sweden for games. Oh, it's not really, well, I guess we would call it a lobby organization, but it's like, and that one presents a new report every year. So I think this year, I don't remember if this was in euros or in kronors. I think it was 36 billion that the industry, what's the word in English? Well, the industry produces like 36 billion kronors, I think, which is like 3.6 billion. I think it was 36 billion only. Either was it's like so it's like either it's like 3.6 billion euros or it's 36 billion euros, which is quite a lot for a country of 10 million people anyway, I think. Like we have DICE, DICE and King and Minecraft obviously, like Mojang. So we're quite a lot of big hitters in Sweden. And we are like 7,000 people, 7,000 developers, I think, in Sweden, and 360 companies. So I think it's very healthy.
Is there still something you say you still need or miss? Maybe especially as an indie developer in Sweden?
Yeah, I wish they had some kind of grant that could help new businesses to just get off the ground, like just to prototype or just because there's like, while the business side is not bad in Sweden, it's very hard to get funding at the early stages, especially as a newer studio. Like there's like, you basically have to create a project and fail once and then make another project. Otherwise you probably don't have a chance, or you're very lucky, kind of. And that's what I think would be very nice, like have more support for new companies.
Do you think that will get better at some point?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I think Thunderful has some new initiatives as well that I'm not quite sure about. And I think they will also be very selective, of course. But I think the state in itself could probably, or EU could help companies more because they don't really understand game companies. And that's why I think they don't get funding in the same way that normal companies get. Like app developers and website developers can get money pretty easily as funding, like early funding help. But for some reason, games can't do that. I don't know why. Maybe it's some bias or something.
Like they don't accept games as much, or?
Yeah. Or maybe they just find it to be, like they don't understand it enough and they see it only as a risk.
Or they aren't gamers themselves.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, I heard that from a lot of countries that, I don't know, games are still not accepted as being like a cultural thing, or, yeah. Although they're making so much money, like it's still hard for many indie developers, especially, to get funding and to be accepted. So yeah, I don't know if that's in Sweden, if that's the issue as well.
Well, I think we have a very big healthy industry, so it's not impossible, and there are more companies that can actually support indies as well and do publish indies. But we didn't have those until like maybe 4 years back or 2 years back. So like Embracer, I think they're called, has something they call Amplify, and they can like go into some smaller newer companies and buy a share and help supporting them. And I think Thunderful is also kind of all right with finding smaller studios and publishing them.
Source of Madness, your current game, is in early access at the moment. You're still working on it, but would you say still it is a game, it turned out how you wanted it to be?
Yeah, I would say we wanted to do crazy stuff with physics bodies, like rigid bodies. Well, that's technical terms, but I mean, we wanted to do a spell slinger roguelite game with dynamic organic monsters that you can like, the spells has effects on them and that kind of stuff. And I think we have created kind of more than that in a sense. So yeah, I think we have made pretty much like what we wanted it to do.
Yeah, so I'm really excited how it will turn out to be in the future.
Yeah, I think we have lots of systems. We just haven't used them enough yet. Like we have a lot of systems that were made for this game, but we also made a lot of the spells doesn't have as much. Well, we haven't used the full potential of what we could do, and that's what we're going to start experimenting with now. And I think we're going to create a lot of interesting physics-based spells that, like for example, with like sticky bombs or anti-projectiles or anti-gravity spells or kind of like shock waves and that kind of stuff.
Is there maybe something you want to tell Swedish indie developers who are maybe wanting to start their own business in Sweden?
Yeah, don't do it alone. Even though people can make it work, I think there's always good to have a business partner. It's the main thing, I think. And also try to get in contact with an incubator. So like there's a lot of like incubators in Sweden for games. Or is it like, I think it's like 4 or 5 even. So it's like we have only 3 big cities. So there should be a way to find and be part of an incubator. And they are very nice and they don't really take a stake in your game or in your company. So they are funded by EU directives. So they are very off hands. And they can be very helpful to get out and get in contact with the right people.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thanks so much for the advice and for being here, Per, and to sharing your stories with us, especially the wrestling thing.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't become a Me Too thing now.